because we are certainly not the least and maybe the most indigenous people to the region. Until you,
dude, you're Polish.
Chuck, stay with us. I'm going to come to you after.
No, I am not willing. I am not willing to engage in this kind of discussion.
Agree or face the consequences? That's the warning to Hamas following the announcement of a new Gaza peace plan. Israel says it's on board. The White House has called it historic. But there's a catch. Hamas wasn't consulted. Is the future of Gaza being decided for the Palestinians without their input? We debate the latest deal on Counterpoints with me, Melinda Nusafora. It was a typically superlative-laden address from the US president.
So this is a big day, a beautiful day, potentially one of the great days ever in civilization. Big day.
Alongside Benjamin Netanyahu, President Donald Trump outlined the 20-point peace plan that has the backing of Israel, along with many Western and regional countries.
And as I was called by many of the European leaders, most of them saying, is this true? Are you really doing peace in the Middle East? This is the most incredible thing we've heard. Some think it's the biggest thing they've ever heard.
And it would be if this was a comprehensive roadmap born out of collaborative negotiations and agreed to by all sides. However, this Israel-US plan was announced to the press before Hamas negotiators had even seen a copy of it, let alone signed on. According to some regional analysts, it's less of a roadmap and more of a rough sketch. Of particular concern is the day after plan, which envisages Palestinians handing over control of Gaza to an international body led by President Trump and including former UK Prime Minister Tony Blair. Coming up, we'll debate whether this is really an historic plan that can end the war and deliver long-term peace, if Hamas has no choice but to accept the deal, and if the day after plan is a colonial imposition or a pathway to a Palestinian state. Joining the show is Chuck Freilich, a former Deputy National Security Advisor for Israel and Professor at Columbia University. Cenk Uygur is joining us again here on Counterpoints, host and CEO of the Young Turks, an independent American news organisation, and Kamel Hawash, a Palestinian writer and analyst who vice-chairs the Palestinian Solidarity Campaign, is rounding out our panel. Gentlemen, welcome to Counterpoints. Well, President Trump says his 20-point plan will not only end the war in Gaza, but ensure eternal peace in the Middle East, as he called it. Considering the generations of entrenched mistrust and conflict, it is a bold claim. But the newly announced deal has been endorsed by regional neighbours and major Muslim-majority countries. Kamel, let's start with you. Can this deal actually end the war and deliver long-term peace?
First of all, say that I'm no longer the chair of the Palestine Solidarity Campaign. I stopped being that a while ago, so I speak in my own name just so that it's clear. I'm not speaking on their behalf.
Okay.
When I heard the plan, the thing that came to my mind was the Balfour Declaration, because I'm here in the UK. We had a Zionist, Rothschild, and a British minister deciding for the Palestinians what was going to happen in their land. And when I watched Trump and Netanyahu, it was deja vu. You had a Zionist in Netanyahu and an American president deciding what happens to the Palestinians in Washington. In both cases, the Palestinians were missing. So before we jump to what might happen, it's important that the lack of presence of the Palestinians is wrong. They should have been involved, even if it wasn't the Palestinian Authority, someone else and a few Palestinians could have been involved in these discussions. Now, in terms of the plan, it is an Israeli plan approved and agreed with Washington because they are partners. And the way it's framed, it considers what does Israel want and says, here you are, have it. And then on the Palestinian side, there might be an end to the aggression by Israel and the genocide. But what is certain is the release of the remaining prisoners of war. The fact that Gaza would be economically developed again by an organization that has nothing to do with the Palestinians on behalf of the Palestinians, but really for Trump and his cronies to benefit, is also an important problem with this particular plan. Now, of course, what we all want, I'm sure, is an end to the killing. And that is what is playing on my mind. How can we get to that? Because even today, the Israelis continue to commit crime after crime after crime in Gaza, killing little children, killing women, killing elderly men without mercy, and then finally saying to them, if anyone remains in Gaza, which is home to 1 million people, they will be considered terrorists or supporters of terrorists. Mm-hmm. How can you build a peace with that all happening in the background?
Okay, Chuck, give me your thoughts on what Kamal has said, but also on your impressions of this deal in general.
Well, first of all, let me say that I greatly regret some of the things that Kamal said. I think this is a continuation of the kind of time-worn and most unproductive rhetoric that we've heard from the Palestinians for decades, and it doesn't matter what is happening, we will hear the exact same arguments. Now, Kamal may be right that the Palestinians were not really.
Do you agree that the Palestinians should have been involved? Do you think the Palestinians should have been involved in these discussions?
We'll just let Chuck finish his response first, and then I'll get you to reiterate your point.
I mean, it really helps to let me finish my sentence, because what I was going to say is that you might be right that the Palestinians were missing here. But there is a reason for that. When you reject proposal after proposal after proposal, dramatic proposals that Israel and the United States have put on the table repeatedly, which would have given the Palestinians a state on 100% of Gaza and 98% of the West Bank 25 years ago, with the capital in Jerusalem, when you keep rejecting just about everything Israel could possibly give you, then you lose your agency. Now, we also hear the endless and false allegations of genocide. If you want to talk about genocide here, the only party that has tried to do it is Hamas, whose plan was for Israel's destruction. And we know from the captured documents that there was a Hamas, Hezbollah, Iranian plan, which was for Israel's destruction, not in the future as the Iranians and the others have always spoken. But Mr. Sinwar had the idea that it could actually be done in 2023. So Israel has been fighting a war for its survival against an enemy which was committed to its extinction.
Sorry, keep going.
Now, sir, you can laugh, and I can laugh at what you will say, but we might want to conduct a more polite kind of discussion here. The plan isn't an Israeli plan. Again, this is the typical kind of rhetoric that the Palestinians always say, because they are incapable of saying yes to anything that is less than 100% of their demands. And you don't get that in the real world. Now, this is a plan which ends the war. I believe the Palestinians are interested in that. It speaks about a Palestinian state. That's something that the right-wing coalition in Israel, who I do not support, by the way, but that is something that the right-wing coalition in Israel may come apart over. It talks about a peace process leading to a Palestinian state down the line. So since Hamas started this war with a massacre and bears at least half, I would say much more, of the responsibility for the war's perpetuation, it's actually a pretty good outcome for them. The biggest problem, if I can just say, is actually in what should be on paper its greatest advantage. which is that it speaks about Hamas being disarmed, dismantled, about a new non-Hamas government taking over, both in the transition period and subsequently. I think it takes a really big leap of faith to believe that this international force can really lead to Hamas's disarmament, and it's no longer being the government in power. That's where I have a major problem with this plan.
We're going to come to Hamas specifically in the second section of our debate, but Cenk, let me bring you in here. I mean, what do you make of that? A maximalist approach from the Palestinians hasn't worked. You know, they've lost agency in some of what Chuck was saying. What do you make of that?
Yeah, so first of all, I'm going to probably get disagreement on both sides here, and I'm going to surprise you guys a little bit in a second. But first, to the points that you're bringing up here. All this is nonsense. It's not remotely true. So there was American negotiators who said the Rabin deal was a joke. It was totally skewed towards Israel. Almost every deal that Israel has offered has been totally skewed on behalf of Israel. They offer you a terrible deal, and then you go, why? You didn't take the deal. Like this one in particular. There was one offer. Ehud Omer in 2008 kind of made an offer that I think the Palestinians should have taken. But so, okay, we can agree to disagree on whether they did the right thing or the wrong thing at different times. But the second part of that was what was disturbing, because the professor here seems like a very genteel guy and love to get, into an exchange of ideas, etc. But then he says things very subtly that are really terrible. Like the Palestinians have lost their agency. What does that mean? Are you saying that that we don't have to take them into account anymore? We can just ignore them. And I know what you mean in terms of Israel.
I was saying that's
slaughter them,
unfortunate.
starve them. Wait. Okay, we'll let you finish. Let me finish, and then you can answer. Okay, so look, let's get to the deal. And then I want to address one other thing the professor said. Okay, so I think that they should take the deal. I think that Hamas should not run Gaza, and that doesn't mean that I think the deal is a good deal. I think Israel will, whether it's good or bad, is irrelevant, because Israel will never abide by the deal. And in fact, Netanyahu has already said in Hebrew, conveniently, back at home, we're not going to leave Gaza. He thinks the Americans are a joke. So he's like, yeah, I'll tell the Americans we're going to leave Gaza. We get the hostages back in 72 hours. And then obviously what they'll do is what they've done literally every single time, which is they'll break the ceasefire and they'll go back to massacres, and they'll go back to the slaughterhouse. They'll go back to the internment camps. They'll go back to ethnic cleansing and trying to drive out the Palestinians so they can steal Gaza for greater Israel. But I want that exposed. First of all, I want the hostages back. Second of all, I don't want Hamas running Gaza. And third of all, I want to expose Israel's actual agenda, because there is a 0% chance that Israel is going to stop.
I'm going to put that to Chuck in a moment. Chuck, I'm going to bring you in on that point. But Kamal, let's bring you back in. What do you make of some of what both of the gentlemen have been saying here, particularly this idea of a maximalist approach leading to loss of agency for Palestinians? What do you think that means?
The loss of agency has happened because they haven't brought them in. They should have brought them in, the Palestinians. Even though I am against the Oslo Agreement, there was at least negotiations between the Palestinians and the Israelis. It wasn't the Americans and the Israelis deciding what happens. And Oslo has been a disaster, but that's a different story. I believe that if Israel was genuine about wanting coexistence and peace, and I'm afraid with this government, there's no chance of that, then it would have said, or at least Trump should have said to them, you must sit down with the Palestinians and come to an agreement about how we end the current situation. In terms of the previous negotiations, which went on for years, Israel always wanted them to continue for years. They didn't want to have peace with the Palestinians. They didn't want two states, because Oslo in itself said 5 years from that date, 1990, there will be a Palestinian state. Instead, Israel expanded the settlements to make it impossible for that to happen. And we must remember that while these discussions about Gaza are happening, and in the West Bank, Israel is actually taking parts of the West Bank land, is arming the settlers. It wants to drive the Palestinians out. 75,000 people have been driven in the West Bank, where there is no Hamas, by the way, in government. That 75,000 people have been driven out of the refugee camps, and they've been destroyed in the same way as Gaza has been destroyed. So my interest is in the larger, first of all, end the killing now, but then how do we get to a solution to this problem? Some people think it should be equality for all. And I live in the UK. It would be strange if Indians had less rights, Indian Brits, less rights than, Scottish people or Afro-Caribbeans. Equality should be the basis of anything that happens. The biggest problem is Zionism and the Jewish supremacy that has not ended to this day. And this particular plan is part of it. It is Israel that determines what happens to the Palestinians. And it is not the Palestinians being seen as equals who should be negotiated with so that they can live together as Jews and Muslims and Christians lived before Israel was created in the whole Middle East.
Okay. All right, Chuck, let's bring you in on to respond to those comments from Kamal, but I also want you to pick up on something that Cenk had said with regards to this assertion from Cenk that there's zero chance of Israel withdrawing. I mean, if, as this plan says, within 72 hours, Hamas has to hand over all the hostages. Without any leverage, then what's stopping Israel from saying, well, thanks, we've got them back and now we're going to continue with our campaign, like what they did back in March?
Well, first of all, you've got the fact that Israel will have signed on an agreement. And I agree that in March, Israel did not, but it actually has a long history of abiding by its commitments. And second of all, you have the commitment by the President of the United States, and that should be more than enough of a source of confidence for the other side here. But I must say, I listen to people like Kamal, and I also listen to Cenk, and frankly, both of you simply don't know the facts. Kamal, the Oslo Agreement never said that there would be a Palestinian state at the end of 5 years. It was a framework agreement for a 5-year negotiating position in which the Palestinian side said that their end game is a Palestinian state, and that was a possibility, but the agreement did not say that there would be a Palestinian state. So let's be clear about that.
So that's terrible.
Secondly,
so that makes sense why the Palestinians didn't.
That is not true.
Excuse me, Cenk does not know the history of the negotiations. Oslo was only one of the things I was talking about. What I was talking about were the two proposals in 2000 and the proposal again in 2008. And that would have, I say this again, that would have given the Palestinians a state on 100% of Gaza, 98% of the West Bank, a capital in East Jerusalem, and some resolution of the refugee issue. A complete return, if they wanted, to the Palestinian state. And these proposals were turned down. Now, you have to learn how to say yes, and I sometimes wonder if there was a word for yes, I'm being facetious, in Palestinian Arabic. The talk about, Kamal's talk about Zionism, sir, I submit to you that until you and people like yourself come to recognize Israel's right to exist as a predominantly Jewish state, a democratic state, predominantly Jewish, in the ancient land of Israel, because we are certainly not the least, and maybe the most indigenous people to the region. Until you,
dude, you're Polish.
There will never be peace in our region.
Okay, I'm just going to get you to pause for one moment there, just for the sake of time. Kamal, I want to bring you in.
No, I'm sorry. I reject the issue about Israel has the right to exist in my homeland. It doesn't have a right to exist in my home.
My homeland.
It could have existed. It was. They talked about Argentina. They talked about other places. If you want to go back to history, but if it was you in the United States and others, you would not accept a state coming and imposing itself on you.
Yeah. All right. So let's, first of all, I was fair. I said the 2008 deal was good. That was the only good deal that Israel has ever offered. And so the rest of them were a joke. And in fact, the professor just admitted it. He said, oh, at the end of the Oslo Accords, the Palestinians wouldn't have gotten a state. And in fact, Israel has voted now, their government has, to never allow a Palestinian state, which you have to concede is deeply racist. That's saying the Palestinians are the only people in the world that cannot govern themselves. So we think that they're violent savages. And so since we're so deeply racist and bigoted against them, we will never allow them to have a state. And then that's why I laughed out loud when he's talking about survival of Israel. You know that's just a propaganda trick, right? Israel not only is going to survive, it's not under any threat of it not surviving. It has nuclear weapons. It has Iron Dome. It has the greatest military in the Middle East. And then they do this Hall of Mirrors thing where they're like, oh, I'm so worried we're not going to survive. Meanwhile, they're slaughtering the Palestinians. They've murdered over 65,000, over 20,000, a stadium full of dead kids, pictured in your mind. And they say, we will never allow the Palestinians to exist. And then they pretend they're concerned about the idea of survival. You literally won't let the Palestinians survive, but you're so blinded by your belief that Israel is the almighty and we should all bow down. And how dare you, these Arabs are totally worthless. We can slaughter them at will, but it's my survival.
Melinda, I am getting off this call. I am getting off this call.
Okay, Cenk, just pause for a moment. Let Chuck have his response.
So
Cenk, just pause for a moment.
No,
go ahead.
Look, I got to finish the point. They attacked all of their neighbors in 1967. They took land. Now this has gone on for 2 years since October 7th. It's a genocide beyond description. They murder innocent civilians every single day on purpose.
Okay.
With a worse civilian kill ratio than Hamas. It is a terrorist state. And then they pretend that they want peace. They put an impossible standard in this deal. And I'd love the professor to answer. They say, we want all of Hamas to surrender, and we want all of Hamas's weapons. How do we know when we have all of Hamas's weapons?
Okay.
How do we know when all of Hamas is surrendered?
All right, we're going to move on in just a minute, but Chuck, I'll let you respond to what Cenk has been saying before we move on. Cenk, just a moment, we'll give the professor a chance to respond.
No, we had to steal it because Hamas, not all of Hamas surrendered. They're going to make they're going to stay. By the way, professor,
all right.
When they stay, are you going to come back a year from now and deeply apologize to us and say, you guys were right, we were murderous liars that I was defending? I'm so sorry, I'm filled with shame.
Okay. Chuck, go ahead, give your response, and then we're going to move on to our next segment.
I have nothing to say because really the two gentlemen are engaging. Well, first of all, they simply do not know the facts, and they are distorting those that they believe they know, and they throw out these terms. This really is just a form of propaganda or information warfare when you throw out terms racist and genocide and
I say anti-Semite.
Cenk, let Chuck finish, please.
In fact, you're the racist.
Cenk, let Chuck finish, please.
You're a racist for not allowing a Palestinian state and saying the Palestinians have no agency. We shouldn't even talk to the Palestinians. They're so subhuman.
We'll let Chuck finish. Go ahead, Chuck.
You admit that occupying them for 58 years is obviously
Cenk,
racist?
we have given you plenty of time to speak. Now we're going to let Chuck respond. Thank you, Chuck.
So, okay, I'm not going to respond anymore to these comments because they are simply not worthy of a serious discussion. Yeah. What I do want to say is that rather than throwing out various terms and epithets, what we should be engaged in a serious debate or serious discussion about how we go forward to achieving peace between Israelis and Palestinians and Israelis and the broader Middle East. Now, I believe that the Palestinians have missed their historic opportunity to have a fully independent state.
Here we go again.
Because they have said no to
Here
everything.
we go again.
And
here we go again. Missed their opportunity. The fact that they've been occupying my homeland since 1967.
I am about to get off
it is the propaganda that you are throwing at the audience. You are
Okay,
throwing
thank you.
propaganda
I
at the
am getting
audience.
off the-
All the
Kamal, we'll let
points
Kamal, we'll
come
let
from you.
Chuck finish, and then we're going to move on, as Chuck has said, to refocus on the deal at hand. You know what? I'm going to move us on. Let's take a pause there.
But
Let's
what is-
go
I'm
to
sorry,
looking
I'm
at.
curious what Chuck is going
Let-
to say, though.
No, no, no.
Independent state, and then what happens?
No, because we need to focus on the topic at hand. There's a deal on the table, and that's what we're here to debate. We can't debate history. We can't debate whether the Oslo Accord said this or that. That's not the deal that's on the table. This is the current deal on this table, the 20-point plan that was announced on Monday. This deal requires Hamas to disarm and renounce control of the Gaza Strip. And it also precludes them from any future role in administrating Palestinian territories. So let's focus on that in this next segment. Kamal, I want to ask you, considering the devastating number of casualties that we've seen, the vast majority of Hamas leadership have been killed, does Hamas have any choice but to accept this deal? Should they accept the deal that's on the table?
It is what they're discussing at the moment, and I'm not going to prejudge that because they will be asking questions of clarifications we're not privy to, and I would like to hear what they ask for. But at the end of the day, let us acknowledge, first of all, and I'm not talking about Hamas and its methods, that the Palestinians have a right to resistance, including armed resistance under international law in accordance with international law. If we can't have that, and therefore we don't acknowledge there's an occupation in Palestine, then we're not going to get anywhere. So it's important that we say the Palestinians have the right to resist. Mostly since the 8th of October, Hamas has been fighting who? The IDF. And that is the occupying army in Gaza itself. So I think, and this is where it's quite difficult even for someone like me. I want the killing to stop. Okay, I want the killing to stop. But what this deal includes is another occupation layer above what we had before. So even if Hamas agreed to it, it's an occupation layer that a war criminal, Tony Blair, will be joining to administer. And I'm from the UK, I was prime minister here. So I think we should leave Hamas to discuss this, to see the points of clarifications that they need to have, because not everything is written down in the 20 points, even though there are quite a few things I disagree with.
Mm-hmm. We're going to come specifically to that issue of Tony Blair and of the Board for Peace in our next segment. So I'll park that point for just a moment. Cenk, do you think Hamas should take this deal?
Yes, I do. I think that it's not a good deal. Israel is saying they're going to keep a security perimeter, which means, as Kamal pointed out, that is another level of occupation. They're going to get to control the borders, the sovereignty. At any moment, they can come back and starve and murder the Palestinians in Gaza again and again and again. But even so, I would take the deal because I know that there's no chance that Israel is going to abide by this deal, and there is no chance they are going to leave Gaza. Okay, so no matter what you do, they're going to do that anyway. So take away their excuse. I want the hostages back anyway. Now, how do I know that Israel's not going to abide by the deal? Number one, they haven't abided by a single deal in this 2-year stretch. They are the ones that have broken every single ceasefire, and even the Americans admit that. Okay. Number two, they say the Palestinian Authority also cannot represent the Palestinians. So now Hamas can't. I agree with that. They say the Palestinian Authority can't. Why? And then you ask them, because everything is purposely impossible. So who is a Palestinian that you will allow in your infinite mercy to represent the Palestinians? And the Israelis say, no one. No one. No one is allowed to represent the Palestinians. The Palestinians are never allowed a state. The Palestinians are subhuman, and they will be our slaves or servants for the rest of time. For 58 long, brutal years. This war did not start on October 7th. This particular war started in 1967 when Israel invaded and destroyed the militaries of all of their neighbors, took Sinai, took West Bank, Gaza, Golan Heights. They're an imperial empire in the Middle East, and they make America their vassal state. and we've now given them $310 billion. They stole our nuclear secrets. They are
Okay.
not in any way an ally. They have turned 1.6 billion Muslims against America for no reasons, when Muslims in America could get along perfectly well if it wasn't for the cancer of the occupation. Israel can exist and should exist, and I want it to be a safe Jewish haven. But they won't do it. They reject peace and safety every time in favor of war and land acquisition. And they have maps of greater Israel, and they talk about it. It's not hidden. They say it to their own audience. They want not only Judea and Samaria, that's West Bank and the occupied and Gaza, but they want southern Lebanon, which they're occupying now, western Syria, which they're occupying now, and they want all of that land because that
Okay.
is what they are. They're
All right.
colonizing
Pause there. Let me
empire,
get.
by
Let
the
me
way,
bring.
led mostly by Europeans.
Okay.
Having
All right.
nothing to do with the Holy Land.
Chuck, what do you think? Do you think that there is a chance that Hamas will take the deal? It's all going to go smoothly. If they don't, what happens? I mean, how much faith can be put in a deal that was struck without allowing the Palestinians at the negotiating table?
First of all, I think that the deal, I hope that Hamas agrees to the deal, because it's time to end the war and get the hostages back home. But this deal, like every other negotiated deal, is one in which neither side is 100% satisfied, and hopefully not 100% dissatisfied, because if they are, then they won't sign or they won't adhere to the agreement afterwards. Now, there are painful concessions here for both sides. The fact that there is a danger that Hamas will continue to be the governing body in Gaza, because I raise my skepticism whether the international force will be able to disarm them. That leaves a terrorist organization in charge of a region, an area. Actually, the people who suffer the most from Hamas rule are the Gazans, the Palestinians.
I know. You guys are so lovely.
Israel withdrew. Sir, I am speaking now. Please let me finish.
I know you were in the middle of telling us how much the Israelis have helped the
Cenk, let
Gaza.
Chuck finish, please.
Continue.
Go ahead, Chuck.
Sir, you are a boor and you are incapable of holding a civilized discussion.
I'm giving you facts, brother. You're
Chuck,
doing
Chuck, I have a question that I
Okay.
want to direct specifically
There's
to
only
you.
one
Even if
person for
Hamas,
genocide on the panel.
Cenk, please.
I do
Chuck,
not
even
wish to
if
engage
Hamas
you.
does accept the deal, Chuck, and they disarm, I wonder what guarantee is there that people won't continue to support them ideologically? Disarming is one thing, but how do you kill the idea of Hamas?
Well, when World War II ended, the US had defeated Germany and Japan, or the Allies had defeated them. The Nazi ideology had not been defeated. Many Germans continued to support it, at least quietly. And by the way, for me, the only difference between Hamas and Nazi Germany is capability, not intention. And
Get
we
outta
also have to
here.
understand that there was
Israel is 10,000 times
intention is
closer
the
to the
genocide of the
Nazis.
Jewish people.
They learned really well from them.
And
Goodness me.
Sir, once again, you will allow me to speak. A peace was imposed in that occasion. In this case, there will be, I hope, a negotiated peace. Now, there is a right-wing government in Israel today, which I do not support, but we'll have elections at most by next October, and I imagine probably about a half a year earlier. Mr. Abbas is now in the 20-something year of his 4-year term. We do need elections on the Palestinian side, free and fair elections, and we need a governing body in the West Bank, which can speak both for the West Bank and Gaza, because there cannot be a final peace agreement until there is a Palestinian leader who speaks for both sides and who is a moderate leader. We don't know who's going to replace Mr. Abbas, who is now 89 years old. I want us to go back to a serious negotiating strategy, hopefully leading to a two-state solution, or if not the two-state solution, some other way of separating the two peoples and giving the Palestinians, if not 100% independence, very close to it. No one in Israel has ever called the Palestinians subhuman. Sir, you should be ashamed of yourself.
That's not true.
Nobody
Half the
wants to
cabinet
enslave the
Half
Palestinians.
the cabinet
You should be
Okay,
ashamed of yourself.
before we descend into that again, Kamal, I want to bring you back
They
in
call
with
them
regards to
human
what
animals.
Chuck
Stop
was saying.
lying.
Go ahead, Kamal. I want your
You're asking-
reaction to those responses.
Yeah, look, we can go back to Israeli ministers, including the defense minister at the beginning. Didn't he not call the Palestinians human animals? Isn't that subhuman? How can
No,
you
he called Hamas.
repeat the lies? No, he did not. You can go back and read it in more detail than you have. But it's not just him. The other Israeli ministers who think that Palestinians should be thrown out of Palestine, Smotrich, Ben-Gvir, and others. A minister who said that the nuclear bombs should be dropped on Gaza. Doesn't that mean that they see them as subhumans? This is the problem. Zionism is Jewish supremacy. It is Jewish supremacy because it says Jews have a right of self-determination in my homeland. But in 2018, Israel passed a law, which was the nation-state law, which said only Jews have a right to self-determination in the land that it is on and occupies. So it's really important that we talk. No. The point that I want to come to is we're not going to have peace while the Israeli Jews, and it is Israeli Jews, see the Palestinians as subhumans. It's not going to happen. And even if there is some sort of calm after what's happened, after the genocide, and everyone acknowledges it's a genocide except you. Once that we've come to a point that we need to get the Israeli Jews to see Palestinians as human beings. Why not have one state with equal rights? Oh my goodness me, the Palestinians equal to the Jewish Israelis? We can't have that. This is what the mentality needs to change on the Israeli side. We must change all the curricula. We must de-radicalize radicalize the Palestinians. The Palestinians are under occupation for as long as you cannot understand what occupation means and that your country is occupying another people. It is oppressing them. It's created 800, I think, more gates to seal them in the West Bank. Mm-hmm. And I must continue to bring up the issue of the West Bank because it's not just about Gaza. And I'll tell you what made me laugh more than anything. It was when Netanyahu...
You know something, Melinda, thank you very much. I am not continuing. Goodbye. Mm-hmm. Thank you for inviting me to be on.
Chuck, stay with us. I'm going to come to you after.
No, I am not willing. I am not willing to engage in this kind of discussion.
We like to have both. We like to have all sides on counterpoints here. We want everyone to have their say.
No, but I mean, there's a difference between having your say and having two people ganging up with a purely propagandistic approach. I am trying to talk about how we go forward.
Absolutely. And that's why whenever one of them has a say, we'll always come back to you for your response to ensure that we're not...
This isn't a say, this is a propaganda session. And the gentleman chooses, he cherry picks statements. He cherry picks very unwise statements by some Israeli ministers, most of them unimportant ministers.
Okay.
How about all the time Hamas calls Israeli Jews apes and dogs? Okay, apes and dogs. No one in Israel has ever called the Palestinians.
Cenk, I'm going to come to you in a moment. Let Chuck finish his statement, and then I'll come to you. Go ahead, Chuck, and then I'll come to Cenk.
No Israeli has ever called a Palestinian an ape or a dog. No Israeli has ever called them subhuman. This is a despicable form of discussion. Zionism is the national liberation movement of the Jewish people, and it is one of the more beautiful creations of the 20th century. Now, the gentleman may believe that Palestine...
We are living its effects.
Cenk, I'm coming to you in a moment, Cenk.
May believe that Palestine is entirely his. There are some people in Israel who believe that the land of Israel is entirely ours. The the Zionist movement from 1937 with the Peel Commission through the 1947 partition agreement, and then in Oslo, and in 2000 twice at Camp David and under the Clinton parameters, and in 2008, the Olmert proposal, has proposed that the land of Israel be divided. And I say again, if there is an indigenous people in the region, it is us. There are others who are also indigenous today. And we now have to find a way to divide the land between us so that we can all live in peace for the long term. Hamas
So I want to
started
agree with both of them.
Okay, all right, Cenk, you have a question, go ahead.
So look, I agree that I agree with Chuck that we should have a two-state solution. I agree with Kamal that yes, it is saying that no, Palestinians are not equal to Jews, because if you had one state, they would say we don't want it. The Israelis would say we don't want one state with a democracy because you'll outvote us, and we believe in Jewish supremacy more than we believe in democracy. That's fine. It's by definition. But I get it. We're way past that. Israel exists. Israel's always going to exist. I want it to be a safe Jewish haven. So, like, Chuck has this view of Zionism that I think is preposterous, but I believe him that he really believes that. Like, in his mind, it's this beautiful thing, and they're on kibbutzes, and they didn't slaughter people in 48. They didn't attack everybody in 67. They haven't murdered 65,000 Palestinians. Okay, but that's fine. Let's just separate the two, for God's sake. But in order to do that, okay, we ensure the safety and the peace of Israel, then you've got to ensure the existence, the safety and peace of Palestine. So that's why, Chuck, I come back to you. I'm genuinely asking you because, look, I know sometimes we're loud, but actions matter so much more than words. We're loud because we're trying to stop a genocide. And I think every day on the Young Turks, what would I have done if we were around during the Holocaust? I would hope that we would have spent all of our time and energy trying to stop the Holocaust. So now this is not a Holocaust, it's a genocide, but that's bad enough. So the question then is it even possible for the Israelis to conceive of the Palestinians being allowed to be free and independent? You said earlier, and we didn't let you finish, and I really wanted you to finish, that the Palestinians can't get an independent state. So then what, in your infinite mercy as Israel, decider of all things, and the holiest of holy people, and the ones with more rights, and certainly the one with the greater military, et cetera, and all of the power, what are the Palestinians allowed to have?
Okay, Chuck? What's the perfect vision? What's the perfect outcome?
All I will say is that there were 3 proposals, 2 in 2000, again in 2000.
No, now, Chuck.
Which would have given the Palestinians a state on virtually 100% of both the West Bank and Gaza. This is established fact.
Can we do that deal now?
This is established fact. And as a matter of fact, it was the Second Intifada, Palestinian terrorism, which killed both the Accords at that time in 2000.
But if I can bring you back to the question at hand there, Chuck, what is the best outcome now?
The best outcome is a 2-state solution. The problem is that the Palestinians have so proven their inability to govern responsibly, to put an end to terrorism. This has nothing to do with racism. That has to do with simple lack of competence. Now, that may change in the future.
It's racism by definition.
Maybe they can
racism by
gain...
definition. You were saying the Palestinians are the only people on earth who can't govern themselves. How could it be more racist than that?
I didn't say that. I didn't say that. I said, look at the Palestinian Authority, look at Hamas, which took over and killed the leaders of the Palestinian Authority in Gaza at the time, and then set up a radical theocracy, a dictatorial theocracy in Gaza. Israel withdrew from Gaza 20 years ago in what was an experiment for the long-term peace process. If you can govern effectively in Gaza, Israel withdrew from every inch. if you can govern, and if you can put an end to terrorism, there will be a continuation on the West Bank. And that's why Israel actually dismantled 4 settlements in the West Bank as another token of good faith. And what we got instead was 20 years of endless rocket fire. And we got the massacre of October 7th.
All right, pause there, Chuck. We're almost out of time, so I need to make sure we keep things going. Kamal, a quick response for you, because I want to get to our final question before we're out of time.
Look, I think the 2005 reference is important because, yes, Israel did leave Gaza. What happened, though, Sharon made sure it was not in negotiations with the Palestinians. It was a unilateral act. Again, Israel does what it wants and expects everyone to over-understand it, think positively, and so on. If Israel then, and that was a strong leader who could have made a big difference and actually maybe arrived at the two-state solution that you talk about, but unfortunately, it was not done with the Palestinians, with the PLO, trying to make sure that Gaza was the beginning. But then the reality is, if I said to you, Chuck, do you think that all the settlers in the West Bank should leave, and therefore the Palestinians can have the whole of the West Bank, the whole of Gaza, and East Jerusalem without the settlers? Isn't that what will bring peace to the Holy Land?
No, because that was offered and it was rejected by the Palestinians.
Well, why don't you offer it again? Then why don't we offer it again?
The current, fine. I would like to. The current democratically elected government in Israel does not support that. As a matter of fact, most people in Israel today, including the left, believe that we cannot, for the foreseeable future, we cannot separate, or at least we cannot relinquish military control, because what happened in Gaza or along the Gaza border on October 7th, if that happened on Israel's West Bank border, well, that's where Tel Aviv and all of Israel's population centers are, and that would have been an absolute catastrophe.
Okay, we're almost out of time, so I'm going to move us on to our last topic that we need to do. Okay, all right, go ahead.
South Africa, if I may.
Let's be clear.
Just when I look
back, even the Israeli left is for a permanent occupation where they keep the Palestinians
no, I didn't say
under
that.
their boot.
I didn't say that.
Under their boot. Because you say, oh, the Palestinians, we're occupying them, and dare to defend themselves.
Okay, let Chuck respond. Let Chuck respond, Cenk. Go ahead, Chuck.
And we murder them, and then, oh my God, I don't have a partner for peace. So I guess I'm going to have to keep occupying them forever, and then I'm going to have to set up Greater Israel like I've been saying the entire time.
Okay,
They're
Chuck.
on the record, Chuck. They want Greater Israel. You know they're trying to steal Judea and Samaria.
We're almost out of time, so keep these answers short, Cenk. Chuck, quick response from you, and then I need to move us on.
I'm just going to say one thing.
When's the state?
Okay. All right. You know what? Let's get to our final point, because one of the big issues has been with regards to Tony Blair. In 2017, Tony Blair conceded that he and others made mistakes by sidelining Hamas after their 2006 election victory. Instead, in these comments he made in 2017, he said the group should have pulled Hamas into the dialogue. And I'm wondering if we are not seeing history repeating itself now. Hamas has again been sidelined from the dialogue. Kamal, tell me what you think. Is history repeating itself? And is Tony Blair, therefore, the wrong man for the job?
He's the persona non grata in the Palestinian areas. It's well known that the Palestinians do not believe this man, this war criminal, the man who connives to support Israel all the time, rather than when he was head of the quartet, trying to genuinely bring peace. So Tony Blair is even in the UK, when his name was mentioned as someone who could rule Gaza, really? When he went and was part of killing 1.5 million Iraqis, this man should not be let anywhere near human beings, because what his plans tend to discount them, because he wants to make sure he fills up his coffers in his foundation. And let's be clear, Tony Blair's foundation has been involved in looking at how Gaza could be this fantastic place that everyone enjoys, apart from the Palestinians whose land it is. So I don't think the Palestinians see him as someone who could bring not just peace, but he doesn't respect the Palestinians to involve them. And that is, again, a supremacy from the country, Britain, that gave our land away to people who didn't come from that land. That is what Tony Blair is. And I heard today, I think that even the current Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, has commented about Tony Blair in not a very complimentary way in terms of that he can help with ending this. He has no idea how to end it. He does know how to get money from dictatorships for his foundation.
Chuck, what do you think? What can Mr. Blair bring to this situation?
I think Mr. Blair is a man of great accomplishment in life. That doesn't mean that he didn't make decisions as prime minister that some people did not agree with. One of the problems is that every time there is a good faith negotiator, whether now it's Mr. Blair, in the past it was Mr. Clinton, who tried to deliver in 2000, if that person is in any way supportive of Israel, and I'm sorry to tell my Palestinian friends, there are people in Israel who support, in the world who support Israel, or at least partially support Israel, not every position, but they immediately become enemies of the Palestinians. Well, you don't get 100% of what you want in life in any area, including the negotiators. Look, I think I just want to conclude with one sentence here. This discussion or this diatribe is simply a reflection of the Arab-Israeli conflict, an inability to hold a serious professional discussion. And let me just say to Arabiya, because you invite me not infrequently, but if you wish to invite me to this program again in the future, it will have to be with people who can conduct a civilized, serious discussion, because otherwise I will not join in.
Thanks for your comments, Chuck.
How
Cenk,
will we ever get the
what does
Israeli
Mr.
voice
Blair bring to the table? And is this very fiery debate an example of why things have failed for so long?
No. So first of all, I don't know who's closer to Prime Minister Netanyahu, Mrs. Netanyahu or Tony Blair. So Tony Blair is basically rubbing it in people's face. So are there people who are neutral enough who, care for Israel, but have also shown compassion towards Palestinians? Of course, there's tons and tons of those people. When you pick Tony Blair, you're saying, we're not trying to be fair. We picked the guy who's most likely to screw over the Palestinians and side with the Israelis. So, okay, that message is clear. And I will correct something I said, because I think Chuck was right to say he didn't quite say that. I said that he was arguing for, and the Israelis are arguing for, a permanent occupation, and he didn't quite say that. I think the more accurate is indefinite occupation, right? And that's inarguable. The Israelis are saying an indefinite occupation. So then I'm going to say something that Chuck's going to get upset about. But brother, we are having a conversation about a genocide, and you want us to be perfectly dispassionate as you tell us that it's no big deal. If somebody was doing a genocide against Israelis and the others were going, oh, well, it's no big deal, and the Israelis shouldn't be allowed to, or take Jews, which is a completely different category. The Jews should have no agency. They shouldn't be allowed at all. And we're going to continue to occupy 5.5 million Jews indefinitely. They'll have no rights at all, and we can starve them or kill them at any time. But of course, the real problem is the Jews. Now, if someone said that, I would be outraged, and I would say that is deeply anti-Semitic and obviously wrong. Jews are human beings just like everybody else. But when we turn to the Palestinians, they say no. So it's like occupation, in my opinion, there's a lot of different analogies you can use, but the one I'll use is slavery. So it's like white Americans in the time of slavery in America saying, well, we offered the slaves a peace deal, and we said we'd give them, maybe a couple of acres and a mule or something. They didn't take it. That's it. We have to keep enslaving them. Oh, we enslaved them for another 5 years, another 50 years, another 500 years. Well, it's not our fault. It's the slaves' fault. We offered them a peace deal. They wouldn't take it. And then some of them resisted. How dare they? So obviously we had to re-enslave them and keep an indefinite slavery in place. And that's literally that's basically what's not literally, but basically what is happening in the occupied territories now. And if 58 years is not enough, then I'm afraid the Israelis think it's never enough.
Okay, all right, we're almost out of time. Kamal, I want to give you one last comment and then we're going to have to wrap up. Just a quick statement for us.
Well, it looks like Chuck has left us.
He
That's
has
the
indeed.
Typical cowardly way. The typical cowardly way that Israeli spokesmen come. He came with the propaganda.
Okay, he's not here to defend himself, so we won't say anything disparaging.
Because
a comment on our
but
topic.
that directed our discussion. Our discussion was directed in a particular way. We were trying to dispel what he was saying. We were coming up with facts. We were concerned about the genocide. He wasn't. That's quite important. What I think is necessary is a change of mind in Israel. Most of the Israelis want the Palestinians out. The issue that Israel is always troubled by is the demography. There are 7 million Palestinians, 7 million Jewish Israelis. What they hope to get still from what's happening in Gaza is to remove 2 million, so it becomes 7 million Jewish Israelis, 5 million Palestinians, and then move on to the West Bank, because that's the expansionist brain that Zionism has planted in these people, not willing to share the land with the people whose land it is, but actually to throw them out. I was saying earlier, and maybe you didn't hear me, that I found it funny when Netanyahu said Israel had to occupy additional parts of Syria to protect the occupied Golan. You know, they should be leaving the Golan, not taking more land to occupy. That's the mentality we need to defeat.
Okay.
And for as long as Israel, and it isn't just the government, by the way, I am increasingly troubled by Israelis. It's not just the government, as if Netanyahu...
Okay, we're almost out of time,
Kamal.
Kamal.
Become this peaceful partner for the Palestinians.
Okay, thank you very much for your contribution as well. Even though Chuck Freilich has left us, we do, of course, appreciate his contribution. This is a very difficult subject and one that, as you can see, brings impassioned responses. So he's not here to defend himself for these final comments, but we know that he would probably reject a few of the statements that you just made. So in the effort of being balanced, we thank Chuck Freilich for his contribution, a former Deputy Senior Advisor for Israel, Cenk Uygur, who's joining us, host and CEO of The Young Turks, and Kamal Hawash, the Palestinian writer and analyst. To all of our panellists, thank you for a very heated discussion here on Counterpoints. And thank you to you for tuning in to this episode of Counterpoints with me, Melinda Nusafora. To keep up to date with our latest debates and interviews, be sure to subscribe to Al Arabiya English on YouTube, and you can follow us on X and TikTok. We'll see you next time.